my friends. Welcome back to the Caleb Gordon Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb Gordon. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be a part of the program today. I'm so excited to have the conversation with Pastor Steve Spangenberg. He's the pastor at First Nazarene Church here in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. I'm continuing my little series that I'm doing with different pastors here locally. I want to try to platform some of our local pastors and just to have them tell their story, talk about their ministry, talk about their family. And Steve does that, and just enjoy the conversation with him today. I pray that it encourages you and challenges you this week. Welcome to the Caleb Gordon Podcast, Mr. Steve Spangenberg. How are you?
You got it.
So you're the pastor at First Nazarene here in Bartlesville. How long you been here?
So it'll be 2 years come August.
Okay, sweet. We met last Christmas briefly, and then we went and had dinner together the other night.
Yeah.
I've been doing a series of interviewing local pastors, just talking about ministry, life, family, all that kind of fun stuff. So you and I have been introduced by a mutual friend. He's a congregant of your church, Jed, and I'm sure he's excited that I just called him out on the podcast.
Oh yeah, shout out to Jed.
Shout out to Jed. And I just wanted to have you on the show just to talk about you and your ministry and you know, all the fun things that come with pastoring and all that fun stuff. So we'll start with the first question. How did you come to know Jesus? How did Jesus get a hold of you?
Wow. So I grew up embryonic Nazarene.
So whoa. I'm Baptist, so go ahead and help me understand.
Well, so embryonic is just a funny term to understand that I've been
You've been it the whole time.
I have, yes.
Okay, so that's how I was with Baptist. So that would yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So embryonic Nazarene came out of the womb. Nazarene. My parents, they raised me in the church.
Yes.
And but at the same time, you can be raised in the church but not actually follow Jesus.
100%. That was You're looking at the guy right here.
Exactly.
Yes, my dad was a Baptist pastor, and I was not saved until I was almost 20. So 100%.
Yeah. So for me, I was a frequent flyer on Alter Airlines.
Yes.
So anytime the altar was open, I am there.
Right.
There. Right. I think it was really interesting too in the Nazarene church when I was growing up. Repentance was important. It was vital.
Okay.
And so I think that was kind of one of the reasons why. But when I got to my kind of middle school years, I was a pretty bad kid. I've got plenty of stories of ways that I was a pretty bad kid.
Yes.
But I woke up one day in the summer between my 7th grade and 8th grade year, and I really felt Jesus say, "You don't have to do this anymore."
Come on.
Yeah. So that's when I really started to take serious this understanding of holiness, and living out the principles that God instructs us to live out. And I would say that that's when I really experienced his gift of forgiveness and living out the principles of what it means to be a Christian. And then since then, it has been crazy. Never thought in a million years that I'd be a pastor. There's plenty of Sunday school teachers and plenty of people in my congregation growing up that were in the same boat.
Yes.
I came home from our family camp experience the summer before my senior year in high school, accepted a call to full-time ministry.
Oh, wow.
Didn't know what. It was just God saying, lay it down. I want all of you, and I want you to serve me. Yes. And so I had no idea what level or area of ministry. And then as that kind of played out, I became a youth pastor. Yes. So it's been quite the journey. Did youth ministry for 8 years.
Oh wow.
And then I turned to the dark side and became a lead pastor.
Listen, I'm one of those guys that I did student ministry for a long time. Then I jumped into men's ministry, and I felt more alive doing men's ministry than I did anything else. And then to jump into, I'm senior pastoring now, and I love it because I'm implementing the same ideas with the guys in our congregation that I did doing men's ministry, and our church has actually exploded in growth.
It's awesome.
It's just been wild. And so it's funny that you say go into the dark
Yeah.
side, because I will say it's a lot less. I guess the word could be fun, because when you're a youth pastor, you're hanging out with kids, you're doing stuff, and the senior pastor, you're counseling, you're not doing near as many fun things.
Yeah, people ask me what's the biggest difference. I mean, I was a youth pastor for 8 years, and I've been doing full-time ministry for over 20 years.
Yes.
So I've been a senior pastor, a lead pastor longer than I've been a youth pastor. But the one thing that really doesn't change is I'm basically doing youth ministry for adults.
Okay.
Because when I was in youth ministry, I had 13-year-olds that wanted to be 30-year-olds.
Yes.
And now I have 30-years that want to be 13-year-olds.
That is a fascinating thing to think about. Why do you think as we get older, there's this we want to revert back? Why do you think that is?
I don't know. It's interesting. Maybe it's the idea of wanting to always go back to your youth.
I think there's so many nostalgia videos on like Facebook
Goodness
Reels
gracious.
and Instagram Reels. The amount of nostalgia, go back to 1990 or whatever, and everybody's just obsessed with this idea of. I don't know if my parents, they're now gone to be with the Lord, but I don't know if they had this kind of nostalgia where they wished for the 1950s and 60s like we do for the 1980s and 90s.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good.
Maybe they did. I don't know. Maybe we need to ask somebody older than us. Right, so I don't know, but it's a wild thing because I think we have romanticized. Because I grew up in it, and it was cool, but there's a whole lot more technology now that's make things a whole lot easier than it was back then.
Yeah,
maybe that's a blessing, maybe it's a curse. I don't know. I don't know.
And it's cool because I still have that heart for youth.
Yeah.
My goal, even in like preaching, is to consider if I can reach the 18-year-old kid sitting on the very last row in the back of the sanctuary, then I've reached everybody in the room.
Yes.
And because I feel like that engagement is so necessary. It is very interesting when you look at the dynamic that they're clinging back to. I think you've heard the expression, people use it all the time, simpler times.
Yes.
So it might not even necessarily, because I know there's plenty of people that would say, I don't want to go back to middle school.
No.
Right?
Heck
and
no.
I would barely want to go back to high school.
Yeah, and there's no part of me that wants to go back to being a seventh grader. I mean, maybe if I knew what I know now, maybe. But still, even then, I'm like, oh.
Right. But everybody says, never graduate from college.
Yeah.
So like, what is that about? And, what does that mean even in the life of the church?
Right.
And I think it really does kind of go back to if I knew then what I know now.
Yes.
And so I think there is a part of that where the church has been kind of thrusted and catapulted so far forward, because we've been told for so many years we have to be forward thinking, we have to be progressive, we have to be, ahead of the curve. I remember Leonard Sweet saying in the early 2000s, he said, you don't throw the ball where the receiver is, you throw the ball where the receiver is going to be, right, as a quarterback. And so for us as church leaders, we need to think about where's the receiver going to be. And now it feels like we're just having to throw bombs. You know what I mean? It's almost like we have to throw Hail Marys.
It's interesting that you would say that because I remember that was a really driving thing when I was even young. And now there seems like there's this push to go back to what's called, the high church.
Sure.
And this
liturgical.
Or there's a push to make it more, instead of the smoke and lights, there's the focus of a simple hymn or a simple just upright piano, something like that. People are like, this is what we're missing in the world. I mean, part of me, because I'm fine with either or, but I have a preference, but that's and I never want to push my preference on somebody else because that's it's a preference. But I see if there's a desire to want to worship Christ, regardless of whether it's modern music or if it's a hymn, I think that there should be a forward focus of I want to see Jesus made much of.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's sometimes I think we lose that with the rock show because it can be the focus of the artist or the band or whatever, and when you've got just the old lady playing the piano and Victory in Jesus being sung, everybody's like, okay, this is the focus, is that. So I can see maybe that's the nostalgia side of it. I don't know. I just
I think it comes down to authenticity, because I think you can be authentic with the lights and the sound and the big bands, you know. And I think you can be authentic when you peel all of that back.
Yes.
I think what we're seeing is generationally, a new generation is growing into the church, and they can smell a rat.
Oh.
You know, I mean, I'm not saying that.
No, 100%.
But they can sniff it out, and they know, and they want authenticity.
Yes.
So in a lot of ways, I think there is that call back to a time when it was, I mean, for lack of a better word, more authentic.
Yes.
And again, I'm not saying that what we're experiencing now is not authentic. It's different,
but it could be.
It could absolutely.
Because I've been places. I've traveled the country preaching, and man, I've been in rooms where I'm like, this place is awful. Like it's just awful. And then I've been in other places, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the Spirit is so alive here.
Right.
And you can feel a difference. Yeah. And it's a real thing.
I think part of it is we put the dichotomy on whether we are missional or attractional. And the truth is, I want to be attractional because we're missional.
Okay.
You know, and I don't know that they have to stand polar opposite of each other.
Yes.
Which they have been kind of almost communicated that way.
Yes.
You know, you're either missional or you're attractional, and I think that, you know, for me, I like to live in the messy middle. And to think about, okay, what does it mean to be attractional? Not because I want to be the hero of the story, because Jesus is the hero of the story.
Yes.
But what does it mean for us to be missional in a way that there's a group of people that look at that and go, I want to be a part of that.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean?
That's great.
So regardless,
and I think it's interesting because you can have that on both spectrums. You can have you can be the attractional model, even if you're the old school missional, whatever you want. I mean, and there's a way to there's a way to make the room feel attractive, even if it's old school even if it's an old school upright piano and all that kind of stuff. Right. You know, let the word be the center focus, and God's going to be the one who, you know, he goes, if I be lifted up, I'll draw all men. Yeah. Right.
Unto me. Yeah. That's absolutely right.
So
absolutely right.
That's the idea. I think there's so much of this stuff that turns into a glorified TED Talk. Right?
Yes.
And it turns into this, you're focused on the guy on stage. Whoever's on stage is what we're going to focus on. That this is the driving factor. And because I've had it happen even as I'm preaching. Yeah. And there's, you know, or as I'm pastoring, or, you know, if I go on vacation. Yeah. Which is just wild to me. The attendance goes down. And I know that happens in almost every church. Sure. Because the pastor's not here. I don't want to be here. And I'm like, why are you coming to church? Like it happened when my dad was pastoring. Like when my dad was pastor, sometimes he'd go out of town or whatever and have me fill the pulpit. And people would walk in. Like I remember this lady walked in and she looked around and she was like, "Where's Ed?" And I was like, "He's not here." She said, "Well, who's preaching?" I said, "I am." She grabbed her stuff. Yeah. And turned around and walked out the building. Sure. Yeah. Like, why? You're a member of this church. This isn't you visiting. You're a member here. Who are you worshiping? Yeah. Who are you focused on? Yeah. Is the focus Jesus? Is the focus right? And so I'm like, oh, that's it can sometimes turn into a glorification of a cult of personality. Oh yeah. Even in a smaller church or a medium-sized church. It doesn't have to be a mega church ministry. It can just be, you know, the corner church on in any town, USA. Yeah. And I, as a pastor, try to push out. I want us to focus on Jesus. Don't focus on me. Don't just because I'm here. Like anybody that's in the room, if we've got them behind this sacred desk, they're here to unpack God's word, and that's the focus. Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah. I hear that. Yeah, 100%. So, okay. So where'd you come from? So
I grew up in South Philly, all the way on the East Coast.
Okay.
And
grew up rapping Will Smith here in a minute.
So he was West Philadelphia.
West Philadelphia. Yeah. South Philadelphia, born and raised.
So funny story, he used to do a summertime huge it was at the Platte, what they called the Platts, and
Okay.
And we would go out there and have. I mean, it would just be a blast. But
That's awesome.
In the summertime, and
Right.
when he was still kind of Will Smith and
His
DJ Jazzy Jeff.
Yeah. His. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
you got to see him live.
I never actually saw him live because it was more of like a festival
Okay.
and that type of thing.
Yep,
but
yep,
it was a
yep.
cool atmosphere. But
Very
yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So I grew up in South Philly.
South Philly.
I went to school for a year in Boston area.
Yep.
And then transferred to the Chicagoland area. So I had been in the Chicagoland area.
Chi-Town.
Yep. For a long time. That's primarily where a lot of my ministry has taken place.
Nice.
Before moving here.
That's so. That's you came from Chicago to here.
Yeah.
I mean, the weather. I guess it's hot there, right, in the summer.
Yeah, and it's actually. I mean, I think there's more days where it's like what they call the 3 H's. Hazy, hot, and humid.
Oof, gross.
I feel like Oklahoma, it's hot, and there are times where it's humid.
But you guys are right on the water, though, so
Correct.
that'd be why your humidity is just stupid.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's
ridiculous.
wild. What's one of the things that that you love most about being senior pastor?
Oh man, I love being able to empower others to come in, and I think it goes to that idea of, in a lot of ways, the lead pastor, senior pastor, they're put on somewhat of a pedestal.
Yes.
To say, hey, we're going to follow you. Like, we brought you in to follow you. We believe in you, and you're going to do a great job. And for me, I always like to decentralize that leadership because I don't think it's about me. I'm pretty sure. I know it's not.
The last time I don't have
me.
my Bible. It's over there. The last time I read the Bible,
Yeah.
I mean, technically,
Yeah.
Caleb is in the Bible, but it wasn't. It wasn't this Caleb.
Exactly. And so I always, and even when I'm having meetings with my staff and meetings with leadership, I'm saying, the decisions that we make today will affect the church tomorrow.
Yes.
And I will not be the last pastor of the church.
Oh my gosh, no.
And so knowing that, if you go into that seat, knowing you're not going to be the last pastor of the church, I think you lead differently. Yeah. And because, the Spangenbergs have a saying, and I've started this when I was in youth ministry, and then when I had kids, because I started as a youth pastor before I had kids, and then when I had kids, we adopted it as a family motto: leave it better than you found it.
Yes.
So whether I'm here for 8 minutes, 8 years, or 80 years, the goal is to leave it better than I found it. And to recognize that my role and opportunity is to empower the church and to give them so like the DNA of the church was not something I brought to the church. It's always been there.
Right.
But
you might change. There may be a little bit of a change because you're at the helm of the thing.
Sure.
But no, I see that.
But ultimately, the DNA's already been there. And so for me, it's really fun, like, because you asked the question, what is it, that I like the most about it? I like mining for those pieces of DNA and allowing the church to be its authentic self and its most authentic, self. So I think that's cool. That's a lot of fun.
Yes, that's
To
fantastic.
be able to get there.
That's great. So one of the things that you and I connected on when we had dinner was our heart for men's ministry.
Yeah.
And I have been, like I said, I got thrust into men's ministry. We called it Brotherhood Breakfast. Mm-hmm. And I remember growing up as a kid, hating it because it was literally a bunch of old men getting together, and they were, and it would start at 9 and we'd be done by noon. And I was just like, as a young kid, I'm like, I don't like this. And so they said, hey, you're in charge of Brotherhood Breakfast. And I was like, okay, I'm going to totally make it different.
Right.
So
because you're like, you want it to be something that I want to go to
I wanted
as well.
something that's cool, right? And so we get in there and I'm like, okay, we're going to, I need guys to help cook. We're going to rotate teaching. We're going to do all the things, but we're going to try to pack it in within an hour.
Right.
I want it done within an hour. Sure. Maybe hour 15.
Yeah.
Eat, teach the whole night, because Saturdays are precious to guys.
Yeah.
So we started at 8:30. We were done by 9:30, 9:45 at the latest. And it was wild is the guy stuck around to 10:30 just visiting.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And it went from just a handful of dudes to, by the time it was all said and done, we were averaging anywhere from between some weekend or some months it was 40, and then our zenith was like 75.
It's awesome.
And I was like in a church of like 35.
Sure.
So
Right.
Like, it was just insane. We had senators showing up, congressmen were showing up. Okay, it was bananas. And I get that my dad was city manager for a while, so that did have some impact, but it was still that they consistently showed up every time. It wasn't like, and it wasn't just me teaching, or I brought in other guys. I brought in like Dr. Everett Piper. I brought in a couple, Ryan Dobson came in. We had a bunch of different guys that come in and did a ton of different teaching.
Awesome.
And when we learn to empower the guys, like this, and this isn't a sexist statement. This is just facts. The data proves it, that when dads get involved, when husbands get involved, the church grows.
Yeah.
Because 93% of the time, the wife and kids follow suit.
Right.
Whereas if you focus on, which I'm not against kids ministry or women's ministry, I think they're fantastic, needed, and awesome. But I think we put all of our focus on the last two, which, like I said, not a horrible thing.
Right.
But if we'd focus more on our guys and unleash our guys, like you said, mine for that DNA, unleash our guys to lead like they should be leading, the women's ministry is going to thrive. Youth ministry is going to thrive. Why? Because dad's coming. And if dad's coming, guess what happens? 93% of the time, the rest of the clan comes, right?
Right.
And so if you get the kid, I think it's 3.5% of the time.
Yeah.
And if you get mom, 16% of the time. Like, so that's the raw data.
Right.
Like, that's not me being like chauvinistic. It's not me being, it's whatever. I'm just showing the data. Here's what it says.
Right.
And what it tells me is, if we unleash our guys to lead and to love their families the way God intended it, the church is going to explode in growth.
Yeah. So I'll ask you a question.
Yeah.
What do you think was the catalyst for guys showing up and, even more than who you had on a regular basis showing up to Sunday, Sunday worship? What would you say was the catalyst for having them to show up and keep coming back?
Honestly, I had David Murrows on my podcast. He wrote the book Why Men Hate Church, or Why Men Hate Going to Church. Or I think David. I'm sorry. I know he's going to watch this, and I know I'm going to screw that up. I'm sorry. But he wrote this book, and like, guys go in and they look around, and it looks like you're walking in your grandmother's parlor.
Right.
And that was one of the things. And it is. If you walk into most churches, there's doilies hanging everywhere, and it looks like grandma's, which that's not horrible.
Right.
In grandma's house.
Sure.
That's how it should look.
Yes,
right?
That's right.
That's how it should look. But when we walk in the church, I think there should be an invitation. Hey, this is a masculine place. We want you here. And it doesn't, we don't have to have, moose heads hanging on the walls and things like that, which I don't think that's necessarily a horrible thing. But there should be an invitation to make guys. So that's what we tried to do, is we tried to make guys feel welcome rather than just inviting them, because we can do inviting all day long. Make them feel welcome when they walk in the door.
Sure.
And so that was our big push. And so our guys, even in our church now, like, we got our whole back wall of, I call it the back wall of dudes that just hang. They hold up the back wall on our Sunday mornings, and so they're shaking everybody's hands. They're like there's 10, 15 guys that are just lined up, and they're making everybody feel welcome, hugging everybody. Even though I know some people, I don't like to hug. Well, get over yourself. Yeah. It's so you'll be at your church. You'll be fine. Yeah. And so I think that's how we did it. We just made it feel welcoming.
Okay. So welcoming, and then having them feel like they're a part.
Yes. They were invested. Like, I gave everybody a job to do. Because, okay, think about this. Most guys don't like to, let's go hang out and talk about our feelings. Right? Nobody wants to. I don't want to go hang out. Now, if you get a bunch of ladies in here in my house and they sit around, they'd love to do that, right?
Sure, yeah.
But if you go like, hey, Steve, I'd like to talk to you about your feelings, you'd be like, bro, get your hands off me.
Right.
Don't do that.
We're done.
But hey, my side-by-side's got some issues.
Yep.
Do you mind coming over with your tools? I know you got this special tool that they got to call your box of tools. Yeah. Could you come over and help me work on that? You'd be like, yes.
Right.
There's a mission, right?
Yeah.
There's a goal. There's a plan. And if we lay out, there's a mission at hand for us as men. There's a goal. There's a plan. There's a war. There's a battle.
Yep.
Back to that John Eldridge, there's a battle to fight thing.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's the idea. Invite guys in to say, okay, I want to, you got a part to play in this.
Yeah.
And I mean, I believe that so hugely, that God's put us here for such a time as this.
Yeah. So circle back into the understanding of that is youth ministry. So again, when I was in youth ministry, it was take them with you.
Yes.
Right. So it wasn't just having kids show up to an event, an activity, those types of things. It was, hey, I'm doing a project at the church and I've got to build something or whatever. And I would have like, kids, students I would call, typically guys, right? And I would have them meet me at the church and bring them with me, and they would do the project with me.
Yes.
And what's amazing is that's discipleship.
Yes.
Right? Discipleship isn't just sitting down, opening up, God's word and saying, well, let's read this together and talk through this. It's actually actively doing it. It's living it out. It's having conversation, because when you're, working on your side-by-side, guess what? You're going to be having conversation too.
Yes.
So it's ultimately back to discipleship. Yes. It's taking them with you. And I hear that. I think that there are many men that they might not don the door of the church. They might not ever, or what they call darken the door of the church.
Right. Yes.
But they'll come to your garage.
Come on.
And they'll come and hang out with you. Yes. And
yes.
And you have to build that trust.
Come on.
Because it's not, trust is not just given, it's earned. Mm-hmm. And when you've earned the trust, then you earn the opportunity to speak greater truth into their life, into anyone's life, regardless of gender. But as we're talking about, we're talking about men.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me, as we were talking about, like, there is that kind of almost circling back of the things that worked when in youth ministry will work even in men's ministry for
Absolutely.
example.
Yeah, I think about my dad's conversion. Like, he was working on his car, and the pastor of the church, came to his driveway. He was underneath the hood, and he just came up. He's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And talked to him for a few minutes. Ask him what he's doing with his car, and ask him about the car. And then he asked him, "Hey, you got a Bible?" He's like, "Yeah. In fact, I've got it on my shelf in there. That big black Bible with the gold lettering on it.
Oh yeah,
that was the one they had."
Yeah.
And so he brought that Bible out, plopped it down.
The family Bible.
Oh yeah, the family Bible. Flopped that thing out, and the guy walking through the Roman road.
Oh wow.
On my dad's hood of his Mustang.
Right.
Walked him through the Roman road. Didn't seal the deal.
Really?
Shuts the Bible and says, "What do you think you need to do, man?" He goes, "I guess I need to be at church on Sunday." He goes, "Well, see you at church on Sunday." And left. Didn't seal the deal. Didn't try to
Yeah.
And Dad was a guy, if he says he's going to do it, we're going to be there. So he woke up saying, told my mom, we're going
to church.
And this was before I was born. So I'm glad I had a dad that was post-Jesus instead of pre-Jesus, because pre-Jesus dad was an utter pagan. And so it was awful.
Yeah.
So
so interesting.
Completely different. So yeah, that guys have a place. And if we unleash our guys, I'm telling you, I just think everyone would be better. Yeah. Like, I really do. And this is not a knock on ladies, because I know ladies are doing the best they can, doing what I get it. And there's no knock there. I'm just the guy that tries to empower fellas. Yeah. Because the world today wants to try to cut them off at the knees. Sure. And so I'm like, let's unleash our guys. And the places where you see men leading and loving at the same time, because those need to be both hand in hand. They can't have, well, I'm in charge here. Like, that's not loving. Yep. And then you've got, oh, well, I'll love, but I'm not going to lead. That's not helpful. So you got to have both, right? Right. So it's funny. I'll share a funny story with you regarding it. Like, so we have a very strong core group of men in our church, and it's really a shame because we don't have a very strong designated men's ministry. And I think that's, I'm understanding and learning more and more. It's kind of almost like travesty. Yes. So I was coming from Chicagoland area and coming to Oklahoma, and I went to a couple of events when I first got here, and I would show up and it would be a whole mess of guys, and I would be the only one in shorts. I mean, it could be 100 gazillion degrees outside. Wearing pants, man. Yeah. Not just pants, but jeans. You wore pants. And listen, I'm still in shorts. I'm in shorts today. He's in pants. It's 100 degrees today, too. It's true. So the thing that shifted for me was
was the difference of understanding culturally
Yes.
that, we have ranchers, we have farmers, we have hunters, we have, contractors, construction workers, we have all of those walks of life. But, this is a gene in culture.
Yes.
And so now it's funny when I go anywhere, I'm not the guy wearing.
See, my dad was the same guy. He's like,
shorts.
Men wear pants. We don't wear shorts. Like, that was my dad. Like, that was my dad's generation.
Yeah.
So he was like, I can't believe you're wearing shorts. I wear shorts all the time.
Yeah, right.
Except to preaching. I don't preach in shorts very often.
But I think that's a part of the adapting. I had to learn that about the culture of men in Northeast Oklahoma.
Yes.
Because, coming from, again, Chicagoland area, nothing against Chicagoland area, but it's not, it is typically like running shorts or, and you'll get a group of guys together.
The world, each pocket has got a little bit different setup. 100%.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I think we have to be able to identify and adapt so that we're really doing our part to embrace, the culture of men that God has entrusted to us.
Yes.
Because he's already entrusted a group to us, and I think we need to steward that well.
Love that.
And then when we steward that well, we need to equip and empower them to go and, and to not be fearful to live out their faith walk.
Yes.
And because like you said, I think that's when there will be a huge groundswell.
100%. Love it. That's great. Great nuggets. So good. Okay. How'd you meet your wife?
Oh, man. Well, I was a senior so I went to Olivet Nazarene University, and that's where I met Kaylee, my wife. I was a senior when she was a freshman.
Okay.
And actually, just before that, I had, God and I had a conversation, and I was taking a sabbatical from dating. It wasn't a full I kiss dating goodbye situation. If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. Yeah, I read the book.
Yeah, it wasn't one of those, but it was, I was all kind of twisted up in the game, if you will.
Oh, I get it. Yeah,
and so I said, I'm going to take a sabbatical. I'm just not going to focus on this. And all of a sudden, it was the beginning of a second semester, and she walked in. She sat down at a table with a group of my friends. They were all senior guys. She knew one person at the table who was an admissions counselor. She came and sat down, and we were grilling her about her, nobody asked her what her major was. We were like, hey, we're going to guess your major. So we, of course, were chauvinistic pigs. And we said family and consumer science and, nursing. And I mean,
all the things.
All the things.
All the things. Just,
Yeah. No, and then somebody yelled out, MRS, right? if you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
So it's funny. And she was a Christian ed major.
Okay.
And so she held her own.
Nice.
I mean, it was really, I was very impressed. She impressed me.
Obviously, because your brother's married to her.
Yeah, she impressed me. So she got up from the table, and I was the only guy at the table that stood up. And I said, hey, it was really nice to meet you. Shook her hand.
You were a gentleman.
I was a gentleman.
There you go.
I was. Yeah.
Like, guys, that's what you're. Ladies,
let me tell
look
you,
for a gentleman.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So we ended up having a game night. So she knows this now, but she didn't know then. When she got up and walked away, a buddy of mine was sitting next to me, and he goes, wow, he's like, what did you think of her? She was pretty cool. And we all knew. And, bro code. So if one of your bros is saying he wants to maybe go out on a date or whatever,
you just step back.
Yeah, you back off.
Yeah.
So, but I told him, and I said, listen, I was like, you don't be him and hauling around. Okay. And he goes, well, I'm going to invite her over to game night, because we used to do game nights at our RD's apartment.
Yes.
And so she came over for game night, and her and I really clicked and hit it off. And then we started dating, and then we were engaged and married within a year and a half.
Fantastic. I love hearing that. That's great. Yeah. That's awesome. That's great. What fun things you got planned for the summer?
Well, we did a fun thing. My family and I went to Quebec City, Canada. And so actually piggybacked off of my daughter who's going to Olivet. We did orientation at Olivet, which is, about 40 miles south of Chicago. And then from there, we jumped off and went to Toronto, and then did Toronto to Quebec City. And then when we came back, we did Quebec City, Montreal, Toronto,
all the fun stuff,
and then Indianapolis, and then home. So that was the fun thing we did. Now, the other thing that's kind of fun that's coming up for my family is we are all going on a missions trip tomorrow. So we leave tomorrow.
So you're leaving tomorrow. You could finish the podcast here, and you guys are heading out tomorrow.
Exactly.
Where are you going?
Yeah, we're heading to, we're partnering with an organization called ARO, Appalachia Reach Out.
Okay.
And it's in Inez, Kentucky, which is right on the, as they call it, the Tug River. And it's in the border of Eastern Kentucky and West Virginia.
Yes.
So right there. So it's Eastern Kentucky, right in the heart of Appalachia.
Yep.
So we're heading there tomorrow.
Been both those places. Beautiful, beautiful places.
Yeah, it's very, very beautiful.
Yes.
It's one of the places that it's the fifth poorest county in Martin County is the fifth poorest county in the United States. It's where LBJ declared the war on poverty, and there's still rampant poverty, in that area. So we're doing a family missions trip. We're taking a group of students and parents and adults to there for the week.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I love that. That's great. All right. So if people are interested in finding out more about your church, where do they go? How do they find you?
Yeah. So bfcnaz.org is our website, and that's kind of the best place. You can find us there. We're in a current sermon series called Return, where we're actually studying the 12 minor prophets. So we're focusing on the last 12 books of the Old Testament and looking at the minor prophets. It's been kind of fun for the summer. bfcnaz.org. So Bartlesville First Church of the Nazarene, right on Adams Boulevard in Bartlesville, Oklahoma.
Bartlesville, America.
That's right.
Sweet. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Good.
It's good stuff.